Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Educational Processes in Family and Consumer Sciences Professions. So this week, we are going to talk a little bit about how people learn, specifically learning about how you learn, and then how we can translate that into what we do to teach others. So I have a couple of reminders for you before we get started, and I just want to say happy summer. It is almost the summer solstice, which is one of my favorite times of year because it means the days are really long, but there's still a lot to pack into those days. So as we move forward in this class, one of the things that you're going to continue to see is we are talking about how people learn and how we teach them better. So let me give you the reminders for this week, and then we will get started as soon as I can find. That's what we want. So here are your, oh, gosh, there we go. If you have missing work, if you will please get it in as soon as possible, that would really help me out. My plan for this week is to grade all of the things you guys have turned in so far, because next week I'm going on an adventure. So if you can get that work in, please do it as soon as possible. I will take off minimal points, but know that some points will get taken off just because it's a teeny tiny bit late. So a couple things that you need to know. I had someone email me last night about this, but it is not due until this upcoming week. So your peer critique and self-reflections for the videos that you guys made and turned in yesterday or previously are due this upcoming Sunday on June 16th. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and you are going to watch 2 videos and critique them based on the rubric that is provided. And then you're also going to you're going to reflect on what you did, how you could do it better, and things like that. So that's due this Sunday, along with our learning styles discussion board, because that's what we're talking about this week. And then this week, you're also going to get introduced to our learner and educator essay, which is due June 23rd, so the following Sunday. I'm giving you a little bit more time to craft this paper because I want it to be well thought out and coherent and written in an appropriate manner. And I also just want to give you a little bit of time. So our learner and educator essay is due on June 23rd. In that paper, you are going to write about your learning experiences and how they've affected how you feel about learning and teaching today. And this can be formal learning experiences or it can be informal learning experiences. So think of things like your in-class learning experiences, whether that be middle school, high school, college, or it can be your out-of-class experiences. A few years ago, I had a student who actually wrote about her experiences in learning how to be a better cheerleader. And although that is not a formal learning experience, you are still learning things. So you can write about anything you want to. If you have questions about that, please email me this week just to solidify what you may want to write about. I am going to be leaving town on June 20th, and I will be many hours ahead of you guys. So if you have questions, please send them to me this week or the early part of next week so that we have a really good understanding of what you guys are turning in. On that note, please do not or do share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. It does not have to be anything really in-depth, but it needs to be somewhat in-depth, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about getting to know your learners and learning styles. So a lot of times people think that learning styles are just a whole bunch of hooey and that there are not really learning styles. It's just something that someone made up to ensure that we can meet everyone's needs. But today we're going to talk about how some of it is not a lot of hooey. So there's a couple things we need to consider when we are actually selecting learning experiences for our learners. And we'll talk more about this in the future, but just to give you a little bit of knowledge about what we want to consider, we want to consider what we're teaching. So those concepts and objectives. We also want to consider a variety of things because not everyone learns the same. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute. We want to consider our learners, who they are, what they do, all of those things, which senses may be involved in that learning. A lot of times we can get distracted very easily because of something we see or hear, or something, even if the room is too cold or too hot, which goes to those physical facilities. We also want to consider the time of day or year, what people are doing previous to your learning experience that you are providing. So maybe we have them come in on a Saturday. Why would that be good or not good? So we want to think about that time of day, what we're doing, how we're doing it. And then we also want to think about our own strengths within that, our educators' strengths, to make sure that we are creating things that we are comfortable with. So these are all things to consider when you're selecting those learning experiences. Our learning styles are varied from visual, auditory, kinesthetic. We're going to talk about multiple intelligences. And we're also going to talk about our right brain and left brain learners. So we have lots of different kinds of learning style theory that we're going to be talking about. So multiple intelligences are those things that are believed to be kind of intrinsic to us, and we may be better at some things than others. So think about people you know, or yourself, my apologies, or yourself, and the things that you may be more adept at than other people. I'll give you a great example. My sister is, I would say, a musical rhythmic genius. She can hear something on the radio or in an area of town where music is playing, and she can actually go sit down at a piano and kind of pick that out on the piano. So for her, she may be really high on those multiple intelligences on that musical rhythmic part. I not so high. I'm still pretty high, but not as high as she is. So these multiple intelligences are a theory that Howard Gardner came up with in the late 1970s, early 1980s to say, okay, people are smart in different ways. So we think about who is really good at speaking very well, who is good at working with other people in different situations, who is good at seeing things differently than other people. So those are the things we think about when we think about multiple intelligences. On Blackboard, there is a PowerPoint specifically about multiple intelligences that will show you more about what each one of them kind of entails. So what I want you guys to do is take the multiple intelligences quiz that is in Blackboard and review the PowerPoint on multiple intelligences, so you know a little bit more about the different needs of our learners. You can pause and do that now, or you can circle back to that once you are done watching this video. So the second learning style and learning theory that we have is right brain versus left brain. And this is one that has kind of been debunked as well as the multiple intelligences theory. And at the same time, there are things about it that really make sense to me. So if you think about how your brain functions, there's two sides of your brain, two hemispheres. And your left brain functions are things like analytical thought, logic, language, science, and math. You're usually slightly more intellectual, or using that intellect part of your brain, and you're slightly more verbal. So that right brain sometimes has more holistic thoughts. We use that creativity more. Maybe we're more focused on arts and music, and it is slightly more unstructured and unorganized. So for a lot of us in the right brain, left brain theories, they say that you are right brain or left brain depending on which hand you use to write with. So I'm actually left-handed, which means that a lot of people would assume that I am right-brained. Yep, that's the sign that I'm right-brained. So thinking slightly more creatively about things, art and music, we like those things. One of the things that has come out of a lot of this right brain, left brain research is that people who are left-handed sometimes they have to cross those hemispheres more in order to think through some of the things that they do. Whereas people who are right-handed may not have to cross those hemispheres as much to think through how to do things or those intrinsic things that our brain does. So what we are going to do is you guys are actually going to watch a video to see if you're more right-brained or left-brained. And this might help you in figuring out your learners if they are more right brained or left brained as well. Because maybe if they're more, let me get it right, if they're more right brained, then they need things that are slightly more creative to do. And maybe if they're more left brained, they need things that are more concrete in their assignments. So you're going to need a piece of paper, and you may have to pause the video. I know every time I have shown this in my actual class, we've had to pause the video because it goes really fast. It's a BuzzFeed video from quite a few years ago, but it's still really relevant to what we do. So find a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, whichever you like, and then watch this video and decide whether you are right-brained or left-brained. Okay, this is the video. I'm not going to show it, but you guys go into this PowerPoint and watch it from here. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is the learning styles inventory and whether your dominant learning style is visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Those are our three main types of learning styles that are fairly well understood in learning communities and teacher education communities. So the learning styles inventory is also in Blackboard. It's under, I think it's under a section that says learning styles quizzes. And so you're going to figure out whether you're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. So do that before you go on to this next slide. Pause here. Okay. All right. So if you are an auditory learner, they make up about 30% of the population. So your information comes best by actually listening to it through your ears, from speeches, presentations, and things like that. I would say if you are an auditory learner, you're really good at listening to audio books. I am not good at listening to audiobooks because it takes a lot of concentration to understand, to hear what's going on. So usually you have a knack for foreign languages and you benefit from study groups because people are always bouncing ideas off of each other. So if your highest of those auditory, visual, and kinesthetic is actually visual, you are in the majority of the population. You tend to be neat, tidy, excellent spellers, and quick to read charts. You also tend to be the fastest talkers, which if I ever speak too quickly in one of these videos, please tell me to slow down at some point. So I am highest usually on the visual side of learning and kinesthetic, which is the last one. So they make up just 5% of the population, and they're primarily male and love hands-on things. So they're often skilled athletes, musicians. They're drawn to things that you can do with your hands, like construction, science experiments, field trips, things like that. So our auditory, visual, and kinesthetic are our three main types of learning styles that most of us adhere to being fairly normal or regular, not normal. We believe that these are true. How about that? So when you are in a classroom, like a physical classroom, when you are learning here on campus, think about how your professors teach and what works best for you. A lot of times, because we're trying to help multiple intelligences at once, we do a combination of that auditory, visual, and kinesthetic to help you in creating a really good learning environment. So how do we teach each of those? Visual learners, we use charts, graphs, illustrations, outlines, mind maps, bright colors, things like that. When I can tell you right now, because I am a mostly visual learner, I cannot tell you, after even living in Lubbock for 12 years now, I cannot tell you the cross streets to get someplace like a lot of people can. I cannot tell you, well, I can sometimes, but it can tell you you need to turn right at Target and then turn left wherever. I can tell you visually by pretending to drive it how to get someplace, but it can't necessarily tell you street names and where you are going very specifically. That's kind of how visual learners work. Auditory learners, they verbally summarize things. They really like group discussions and they like recorded lectures. So that's part of the reason I do these recorded lectures for you, because we know that if you are just a visual learner, you may get some of this information, but actually listening is part of what helps those auditory learners. And the last one is our kinesthetic learners. So having music in a classroom, maybe your middle school or high school teachers did that, moving, putting things together, cutting up charts, having like those flip charts that we used to use, diagrams, typing, all of those kinds of things help our kinesthetic learners, because you're actually doing things with your hands and you can get a sense of the learning from doing things. So hopefully that is just a very short summary of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners and the different kinds of learning theory that we talk about in this class. So when we think about combining everything together, what we want, these are a couple of suggestions for how we do that. The first one is to use background music, but not the distracting kind. So think of things or teachers that you've had in the past who use background music to either drown out the rest of the noise around you or to help you keep focused. The other thing we can do is use rhymes or raps to memorize and then walk around if needed. I know when I was studying for my comprehensive exams, that was something I did. I had flashcards that I would read and memorize while I was walking around. So when I was taking my comprehensive exams, what did I have to do? I had to walk around while I was doing things, while I was writing. If you like athletics, do something athletic while reciting information. I wholeheartedly believe that some of our athletes, if we could do this for them, they might actually finish college, for those who haven't yet, and they might do really well in those aspects. So the other thing we can do is study with a partner and use those flashcards again to make sure that we're getting all of our information. And the last idea is to put yourself in the picture. So think about in history where you might fit in to whatever it is that you're learning, especially on the history side of it. So think about how we can incorporate ourselves, where we would fit, and all of those things. When I'm reading, I think about how my life would be different if I was living during that time, or how my friends' lives would be different if they were living during that time. So that's how we kind of put it all together and help all of our students the best ways that we can. This is a video just a little bit about the learning styles, and I hope that you will watch it through the PowerPoint that is provided on Blackboard. And I think that's the end of the presentation. Perfect. So we are going to stop sharing our screen now. And let me just go over one more time what you're going to do for this week. So this week, you have your discussion board for learning styles. Make sure that you do the learning styles inventories before you do the discussion board. And then you also have your self and peer evaluations that are due on Sunday, the 16th. Remember, that is Father's Day. So if you have a parental figure that you are going to be celebrating on that day, just remember that. I know I had some students who had stuff due, it was Easter, and some of them needed extensions because they didn't remember it was Easter. So just keep that in mind, that if you have someone that you are going to be celebrating this weekend, make sure you get your work done before then. And then the other thing is the learner and educator paper. Make sure that you are looking through the rubric and what we will be grading on and looking for before the end of this week, so that you can ask any questions that you may have. Other than that, I hope that you guys have a great week, and we will see you again next week. All right, bye.